Brian Tracy is often seen as a motivational icon, but the truth behind his success is far more uncomfortable than what most people expect. This video breaks down who Brian Tracy really is, how his ideas spread across business and self-help culture, and why millions follow his advice without ever questioning its foundation. It explores what works, what gets misunderstood, and what people rarely talk about when it comes to personal development empires. By the end, it becomes clear why Brian Tracy's influence isn't just about motivation. It's about how belief itself can reshape behavior, expectations, and entire industries. Most people think motivation works because it inspires action. But the deeper question is why certain voices become trusted authorities, even when their advice sounds deceptively simple. Brian Tracy did not start as a polished speaker or a best-selling author. His early life was unstable, marked by financial struggle and constant movement. He worked a series of low-paying jobs, including manual labor and sales, before discovering self-development literature. That discovery changed everything. Instead of treating motivation as inspiration, Tracy treated it as a system. He studied psychology, philosophy, economics, and business strategy, searching for repeatable patterns behind success. Over time, he refined these ideas into frameworks: goal setting, time management, self-discipline, and mindset control. This approach helped him rise in the world of sales. Results followed, and credibility followed results. Eventually, Tracy transitioned from selling products to selling ideas. What made him different was not charisma alone, it was structure. His messages were clean, logical, and easy to remember. He didn't promise magic, he promised order. And order sells extremely well in chaotic lives. But the moment ideas scale, they stop being just advice. They become expectations. Brian Tracy's most famous ideas are almost painfully simple. Set clear goals, write them down, break them into steps, work on the most important tasks first, repeat daily. These principles feel obvious. That's the point. The human brain trusts what it can understand quickly. Tracy's language avoids complexity, not because life is simple, but because simplicity feels actionable. His systems give people something they crave, a sense of control. This is where his influence grows strongest. People don't just listen. They reorganize their lives around these ideas. Morning routines change. Work habits shift. Identity begins to form around productivity and achievement. But simplicity has a hidden side. When a device is too clean, failure feels personal. If success follows simple rules, then falling short must mean the individual didn't apply them hard enough. That belief quietly transfers responsibility away from systems, circumstances, and randomness, and places it entirely on the person. This isn't manipulation, but it is a consequence. Brian Tracy isn't just a speaker, he's part of a massive self-improvement economy. Books, seminars, courses, audio programs, coaching certifications. The business model's elegant. Knowledge is repackaged into repeatable formats, sold across decades, and adapted for new audiences. This model works because motivation expires, inspiration fades, confidence resets, goals drift. That creates return customers, not because the advice is false, but because motivation is temporary by nature. Critics often misunderstand this. They assume the presence of repeat sales proves the advice doesn't work. In reality, it proves something else. Motivation is not a one-time fix. It's maintenance. Brian Tracy understood this early. Instead of selling transformation, he sold reinforcement. And reinforcement scales. But when motivation becomes constant consumption, it changes how people measure progress. One of Brian Tracy's most famous ideas is eat that frog, tackling the hardest task first. For many, this concept is life-changing. It breaks procrastination and builds momentum. But taken too far, productivity becomes identity. Busyness replaces meaning. Efficiency becomes virtue. Rest feels like failure. This isn't unique to Brian Tracy. It's a broader cultural effect, but his frameworks amplify it by offering clear metrics for self-worth, tasks completed, goals achieved, hours optimized. The danger isn't overworking, it's believing that value only exists in output. Some followers internalize the idea that constant self-improvement is mandatory, that stagnation is a moral flaw rather than a human state. Motivation becomes pressure, and pressure, when unexamined, creates burnout disguised as ambition. Brian Tracy is often criticized for repeating ideas that already existed long before he popularized them. Goal setting didn't begin with him. Discipline wasn't invented on a stage or in a seminar room. But originality was never the product he was selling. Translation was. His real skill lies in turning complex psychological and behavioral concepts into language that feels practical and usable. He didn't create the underlying science. He organized it, simplified it, and made it easier to apply to everyday life. That distinction matters more than it seems. Most people don't need new theories to move forward. They need frameworks they can remember on difficult days, when motivation's low and clarity feels distant. Tracy's systems work because they reduce complexity into steps that feel manageable. Where criticism becomes valid is when his advice is treated as universal. Human lives differ widely across personality, culture, resources, and circumstance. What works for one person may fail for another. Tracy's material works best as a tool, not a belief system. Problems arise when people mistake guidance for absolute truth. And this tends to be the most misunderstood part of Brian Tracy's influence. The insane truth about Brian Tracy isn't that he's wrong, it's that he's incomplete. By design. His systems are not meant to explain how the world works. They're designed to help individuals navigate it with more focus and intention. That distinction matters, because explanation and navigation serve very different purposes. Brian Tracy focuses almost entirely on what people can control. He emphasizes discipline, goal setting, time management, and consistent action. He does this because uncontrollable factors don't offer clarity. They create uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people freeze. Clear systems, even limited ones, help people move. This doesn't make his work dishonest. It makes it selective, and selectivity is powerful. By narrowing attention to personal responsibility, people regain a sense of agency. They feel capable again. They feel directed instead of overwhelmed. But there is a trade-off. Structural limits, luck, timing, economic conditions, and support networks fade into the background. When success doesn't follow, the failure feels personal. The danger isn't believing in self-discipline. Discipline is useful. The danger is believing self-discipline explains everything. Brian Tracy's success comes from offering tools, not answers. When those tools are used correctly, they create confidence, structure, and momentum. When they're misunderstood, they create unrealistic expectations and quiet frustration. That unresolved tension is exactly why his influence continues to last. Despite criticism, Brian Tracy's ideas continue to reach new audiences. Why? Because uncertainty keeps growing. Careers feel less stable than they once did. Attention's constantly divided. Long-term goals are harder to define and even harder to commit to. In that kind of environment, complexity becomes exhausting, and clear rules start to feel comforting rather than limiting. Brian Tracy offers structure in a world that feels increasingly unstructured. His frameworks don't try to explain everything or solve every problem. They simplify decision-making. They reduce chaos into steps people can follow, even when motivation's low and confidence is uncertain. He doesn't promise ease, he promises order. And for many people, order is enough to restore momentum. When life feels scattered, having a system to lean on can be the difference between stagnation and movement. His material works best for people who are seeking momentum, not meaning, direction, not identity. It helps people act before they fully understand where they're going. That's the difference most people miss. Brian Tracy's influence isn't insane because it's deceptive. It's insane because of how quietly it reshapes behavior. His ideas simplify action, reinforce discipline, and restore a sense of control while leaving larger questions untouched. And that's the part most people never stop thinking about.